We're breaking down the 3 most common plating mistakes that home cooks make and how you can avoid them. All the tools I use are linked in the description, along with a way for you to level up your plating at home. So the first mistake that we're going to cover is actually probably the biggest, and this is lack of planning. Now, the first thing I think about when planning is, what plate am I going to use? What is the size of the plate and what is the color of it? I want to know, does the food fit on this plate properly? If a plate is too large, then the food is going to look minuscule. But if the plate is too tiny, then everything's going to look cramped. Now, if you're going to be serving a multi-course meal, you want to actually have a progression in plate size. Typically, when we're starting a progression, we want to start with an amuse or a type of appetizer. This should be on the smallest plate. This should have a lot of flavor, but as we go through the courses, we want each plate size to increase. So if you have a first course, like a fish or a vegetable, that shouldn't be a larger plate than your main course. The one exception to this rule is desserts. Typically, a dessert is served a little bit smaller than the main course, but if you want, you can also serve it larger. But there should be a distinct progression in plate sizes. So an amuse or a first course might be served on a smaller plate like this. Then we'll progress to a slightly bigger plate. This is perfect for a vegetable course or a fish course. This is also a brand of plate that I really like, Mikasa. I think that these are a really quality plate for the price that you're paying. And then typically you would end on your largest plate for your entree. Now, when it comes to plates, I typically like to stay with white plates. I think that food just looks better on it. It's classic. You don't have to really worry about how things look. When you dabble with black plates, sometimes that tends to hide certain food, and I don't think it pops the food as much as I would like it. An exception might be a plate like this where you have color on the rim of the plate. Now, I use this plate for a chicken dish that I do, and the reason why is because there's not a lot of color in the dish itself, so the plate actually brings a little bit of color to the dish. But typically, I like to stay with white plates. The last thing that you should consider with your plate is the temperature that you're going to be serving the food on. Now, if you're serving warm food, you should always serve it on a warm plate. Same thing with cold food, cold plate. Room temperature food, room temperature plate. The reason why is because if you're plating something warm on a warm plate, it's actually going to hold the temperature better. If you put food that's hot on a room temperature plate, it's sucking the temperature out of the food, so it's not going to stay as hot. Same idea with plating cold food on a cold plate. Room temperature plate doesn't really matter. I guess you're just kind of trying to keep it around that temperature, but it's very important to consider this so that you can serve it at the optimal temperature. The second part of my plate that I plan out is what I call plating steps. Now, this is the order and the position of the ingredients that I'm going to be plating. The reason why I want to do this is I want to know exactly where I'm planning on putting the ingredient, but I also want to know in what progression that ingredient should go on the plate. This just gives you a clear map on how you should be organizing your plating setup for plating, and it also is going to allow you to understand how each plate should look. When I'm planning out my plating, I want to think of 3 different things: what ingredients I need, how much of them I need, and where I'm going to place them on the plate. For this pork dish, so the ingredients that I'm going to use is butternut squash puree, butternut squash rounds, pork tenderloin, sauce made from the pork, glazed Brussels sprouts, and fried Brussels sprouts. We want to discuss how much we're going to need of each component and where we're going to place them. So the first component is going to be the butternut squash puree. This is going to be a swoosh in the middle of the plate. The next component is going to be the butternut squash round. This is going to be set inside the curve of the swoosh, and it's going to be centered around 4 o'clock. So the next component we're going to use is pork tenderloin. This is actually going to be the main focus of the dish. I want this to be what your eyes are drawn to. Because the pork is relatively small, I want to have 2 rounds of it on the plate. The way that you plate the dish is the way the diner should see the plate. The first pork should be at 8 o'clock. I want to have the cut side up so that we're able to see what the cook looks like on the pork. The second pork round is going to be at 1 o'clock. I want this to be on the side. This is going to give different shape to the plate. It's going to add different color. I think it's going to be a nice contrast to the cut pork. The next component is going to be the glazed Brussels sprouts. There'll be 5 of these, and I want to place them around where they look best as I'm plating. I think a key to good plates is making it look as natural as possible. It's good to plan out and make sure that we fit on the plate, but we want to keep some spontaneity in the plating, make it look natural. And the last component is going to be the sauce. Normally I will go either sauce or garnish last, but the sauce should be inside the swoosh and in between the pork. Whenever you're plating sauce, you always want it next to the component that it should be eaten with. So with this dish, ideally the sauce is eaten with the pork. So we want to make sure that it's accessible to that. So this will be the plate up that I go with, and I'll create a second one just like this, making tweaks just as a backup. The last thing that I do when plating a dish is I create what I call a backup plate. Now this is just a second plate up, exactly the same idea with the steps, but I'll just have two versions of the plate that I'll be plating. Now the reason why I do this is because when you're plating a dish, sometimes it seems like it's going to look really good in your head, and then you end up plating it and it doesn't turn out the way you had hoped it did. So instead of taking everything off the plate and winging it, having everything look worse, and now the food's cold, also your guests are waiting, you have a second plate up that you can go along with and get a second chance at plating this dish the proper way. When I first started cooking at home, this was really important, especially with dishes that I'm cooking for the first time. Typically, I don't use the second plate up anymore, just because as I've progressed with my plating at home, creating my own dishes, I kind of know what things are going to look like, but I'll always have a second plate up. This just gives me a little bit of insurance. It gives you a little bit extra experience planning out the dishes. It makes you a better chef. It gives you a backup just in case. The second most common plating mistake is lack of composition. The first of these is too many ingredients. Now this makes the plate look very full. It doesn't have any focus, and it's just too much going on for the eye to focus on. Now the way that we can overcome this with our plate is using multiple techniques for the same ingredient. This way you only have 3 or 4 ingredients on a plate, but you're using techniques to bring out different flavors, different colors with these ingredients. Not only does it prevent flavors from clashing together, but because you have similar colors going on, everything looks very nice. Second problem with this is negative space or lack of negative space. When you have little to no negative space, it makes everything feel crammed onto the plate. It doesn't look refined. The two ways to create negative space. Negative space could either be in between all of the ingredients, or it could be around the plate or even the rim. Next issue I see with this is lack of balance. The biggest one of this is not knowing the center of the plate. Now, when you're plating a dish, you want to identify where the center of the plate is. Having the food just slightly off center can really make the plate feel off balance, and it doesn't present it as refined. Even if you're not plating directly in the middle of the plate, it's important to identify where the center is and create balance by plating in line with that. This creates a center of focus for your eye, and it's really pleasing when it's in balance with the plate. Another way you can create balance on a plate is by adding height to your dish. This is really important because dishes that are just solely flat, they feel very boring. So adding in some form of height, whether that's with your ingredients or even just having garnishes at a slight angle coming up on the plate, it really brings in nice balance to the plate. The last one is an easy one. It's odd numbers. The reason why you want to have odd numbers is because it creates a focal point to look at. If you have 2 ingredients on a plate, you have to pick which one to look at. But if there's 3, there's always going to be one that's slightly off. Now, this doesn't mean every component on the plate has to be in odd numbers, but if you create a plate where you have 1 item plus 2 other items similar size, together that creates an odd number. So in the end, we're not looking for every component to be in odd numbers, but the total components of the plate to be an odd number. The last common mistake is garnish or lack of garnish. Now there are numerous ways to garnish a dish, and I understand that maybe you don't have access to microgreens or flowers. These are less common, but there is an easy way to garnish your plate with common herbs. The way to do this is by using the smaller leaves of the herb. Now with this basil, I use the larger leaves to make pesto. Typically, if you're using an herb like this, you also want to use it in the dish. A really easy way to use the larger leaves is by making herb oil with that herb and then using the smaller leaves to garnish. So we're just looking for the nice leaves. We don't want anything that's brown or maybe broken, eaten by bugs, but we're just looking for nice leaves. Now I have this in a cup with a damp paper towel. You can just put a lid right on top. Store this in your fridge until you are ready to use it. This will stay very fresh for a couple days and they'll be ready to go. Now, I think it's important to mention that the herb that you garnish with should match the flavors in the dish. If you're serving something like fish, typically mint doesn't go very well with fish, so that wouldn't be a good herb to garnish with. But if you have flavors in the dish that match the flavors of the herb, then it works. Also, one thing is to remember to use odd numbers with the herbs. One thing that you'll see is people cover the plate with herbs, and I feel like that is just a easy way to get out of plating and thinking about plating just by covering it. Especially if that herb doesn't match, then it's just lazy. But there are also plenty of other garnishes that you can use that aren't fresh herbs. You can make tuiles, you can fry fresh leaves, whether that's an herb or maybe something like Brussels sprouts. That really adds texture as well as color and some flavor. Now, one thing to remember when plating a garnish is sometimes you try to plate it onto the dish and it doesn't go exactly where you're intending for it to go. It's usually best to let it lie where it falls. You can try messing it around and getting it where you want, but typically it's just gonna keep on going where it wants. That's why whenever I put an herb on, it falls off, I just leave it there. Want to level up your plating at home? Click right here.